Bill Koenig, and that's who is my primary guest for the next couple of segments here. He is a White House correspondent. You can learn more at his website, watch.org. That's watch as in watchman, watch.org. And learn more about his book, Eye to Eye, Facing the Consequences of Dividing Israel, at that web address. Bill, in keeping with your kind of opening couple of paragraphs here, so what do your White House press colleagues then have to say about President Obama? You have come on air with me for 6 years here, telling me about the love affair of the media with Barack Obama. Has that changed?
For the last 12 to 14 months, the change has been evolving, and a lot of that had to do with the lack of access to some extremely important press-type events, whether it was with some meetings that should have had coverage or photo opportunities for the White House photographers. This has been building, like when there's pool reports, when the president travels, there's pool reports throughout the day of what happened that day, and they usually get funneled through the White House, and then they get distributed to the White House press correspondents. And they've been talking recently about sending those directly, unfiltered, to the correspondents, which is unprecedented. It's a contentious relationship, and plus the fact that the White House, the Obama administration, has been using their White House to go to the public direct, and also using the social networks of Facebook and Twitter and others going direct, and not using the media that spends tens of millions of dollars a year to follow the president wherever he goes anywhere in the world. So this is building, plus a lot of these members of the media are from the Democratic Party, and they have seen their party devastated by the last election, this shellacking, and they're saying, hey, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Things are worsening for our political party and our progressive agenda, and there's no compromise whatsoever, and he's moving further to the left. And at the same time, Jan, too, is there's a great concern in Washington and even people within the media of this situation in the Middle East and the ineffectiveness of the Obama administration to handle the many challenges that the Middle East is facing, which has national security implications.
Absolutely, and I want to head there here in just a second. Folks, if you've just joined me, I'm talking to White House correspondent Bill Koenig for these two segments. Eric Barger is my co-host for these two segments, and we're talking about some significant events of 2014 that have gone on both in America and on the international scene. And Bill, some 9-10 days ago now, the Netanyahu government collapsed, and that'll probably take weeks to play out. Give us a quick summary of how you think it might play out.
Well, the polls right after the government collapsed, Netanyahu calling for early elections, blaming Lapid and Livni for being the problem, both very secular Jews. And also they were putting out the rumor that Netanyahu was going to work out a coalition agreement with the Shas party, the Orthodox Jews, which causes a lot of blood boiling in Israel because of their methodology. But nonetheless, it's early to say, but the polls that came out, it looks like Livni will be out of the government totally. She will not even have a Knesset seat. Lapid's party will drop from the high teens down to 7 or 8. And the center-right and the right will control the new government, and Netanyahu will very likely be the prime minister again. He's just kind of doing a cleansing right now in order to be able to more effectively manage the affairs of the state of Israel. That's been what he's been saying.
Okay. Well, I want to sort of stay in the Middle East because that is obviously the epicenter of all that's going on, and certainly want your comments on this absolutely debacle of an agreement with Iran. But before I go there, Bill and Eric, let me just raise a topic here that we all have an interest in. You write about it in your newsletter, and folks, you can find info on Koenig's Eye View from the White House at his website, watch.org, and that is this tremendous ecumenical push here in the last year. And Eric, you've been watching it. We've been talking about it. We've even got the Southern Baptists going over to the Vatican. It doesn't get any stranger. We've got Pope Francis. You had it on your headlines here not too long ago, Bill Koenig, praying in a mosque in Turkey, praying towards Mecca. Help me understand, guys, what's going on here. Obviously, this has end-time type of significance because all of this is predicted for a last generation. And Bill, how many times have you and I said on air at conferences and other places, you can't understand anything everything going on today if you don't have that perspective. And then you see these things going on overdrive, and you realize that time is truly, truly short when you take it from a final day activities increase in perspective.
Basically, I've watched Pope Francis, who is a popular pope. I had some friends that actually met him when he was a father of Bergoglio down in Argentina and had an hour with him, and they really drew to like him. He understands that the Jewish people are God's chosen. One of my friends was a Jewish believer. He understood the Abrahamic covenant, and he had a really good relationship with the chief rabbi of Buenos Aires. It's just he's a very captivating man and a very decent man, but, he's directly involved in some very significant political and theological issues that concern many of us. Number one is when he went to Jordan and then Bethlehem and then Jerusalem this year, and he said over and over again, talking about two states, two people living side by side in peace and security. The fact is that second state has to be in Judea and Samaria, but nonetheless, he took that very Vatican position of calling for two states, and then he sponsored a peace event at the Vatican between Shimon Peres and Abbas and himself, which Abbas orchestrated. The Pope wanted to do it when he was in Jerusalem, but it didn't happen, and this was Abbas's political event, and the first time ever that a Muslim Islamic prayer had been given there at the Vatican, so that was very significant. And then, as you mentioned, just recently, he was at a mosque in Istanbul, and he prayed along with the Grand Mufti of Ankara, and this was a big thing that went all over the world, and he's been after improving relationships between the Vatican and the Muslims. And then also he has pushed real hard to improve his relationships, and even called for unity between the Catholics and the evangelical Christians